I still remember that morning as if it were stitched into my memory with invisible thread. Quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you wonder if something's wrong, even when everything looks perfectly fine. Before I dive in, tell me, from where are you watching? I love knowing how far these stories reach, and maybe somewhere out there, someone's lived through something a little like this. My name's Daniel. I'm 46 years old, a financial consultant by trade, a husband of 17 years, and until not too long ago, a man who thought he knew his wife better than anyone else on earth. We met young. Emma was warm, grounded, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and instantly make everyone feel they belonged there. She worked as an interior designer, loved the small things, candlelight dinners, spontaneous road trips, fresh lilies on the dining table every Monday. I was drawn to her sense of calm, that quiet confidence she carried like second nature. For years, life moved steadily. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We shared everything, or at least I thought we did. Bills, grocery lists, dreams, disappointments. We'd had our arguments, sure, mostly about work schedules or forgotten anniversaries, but nothing big enough to leave a scar. Until that day. It was a Thursday, Emma's day off. I remember because I left home late that morning. I had an online meeting scheduled at noon, so I was in no rush. Emma had already gone for her morning jog. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter, open, half spilling with receipts and lipstick and the usual clutter. I wasn't snooping, at least, not intentionally. I was looking for my car keys. When I reached for them, I noticed something odd. An envelope, thick, crisp, and plain white, with no writing on it. It wasn't the kind of thing Emma usually kept. She was meticulous, organized to the point of obsession. She labeled everything, receipts in folders, bills in drawers, even spice jars alphabetically lined up in the kitchen. So an unmarked envelope in her purse stood out like a shout in a library. I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. I slipped a finger inside and froze. Cash, stacks of it, 50s and hundreds banded together neatly. I didn't count, but it had to be at least $5,000 or $6,000. Now, before you think I'm paranoid, Emma and I didn't deal in cash. We used cards, online transfers, expense trackers. Every cent was logged. We'd never had reason not to. So where did this come from? I placed it back exactly as I found it, maybe a little too carefully. My heart was already racing, not out of anger, but confusion. When Emma came home later, she was cheerful, sweaty from her run, hair tied up, humming a tune as she poured herself a glass of water. Everything about her looked normal, too normal. I remember standing there trying to act casual, my mind running through possibilities. Maybe she was saving for a surprise trip, maybe a gift. But something about the secrecy didn't sit right. That night, as she showered, I went to her purse again. The envelope was still there. I almost wanted it to be gone, to have been a mistake, something I'd imagined, but it wasn't. Over the next few days, I tried to observe her quietly. She wasn't acting strange, not in any obvious way, but there were little things. She'd started taking her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. Her laughter over text messages became softer, shorter, almost guarded. She'd go for errands and come back hours later with vague explanations that didn't quite fit the time. It's amazing how once you suspect something, your brain starts connecting dots that may or may not even be there. I didn't want to believe it was something sinister. I didn't want to believe my wife, my Emma, was hiding something from me. But that envelope haunted me. Every time she left the room, my eyes drifted toward her purse like it was calling me. One night I finally asked. We were sitting on the couch, halfway through some forgettable Netflix series. I turned to her and said as lightly as I could, "Hey, what's with the envelope in your bag?" The reaction was immediate. She froze, mid-laugh, eyes flickering toward me, then away. What envelope? I held her gaze. The white one, with the cash? A beat of silence, then another. Her expression softened too quickly. "Oh, that," she said, waving it off, though her voice was slightly too bright. "Just some money I took out for work. A client wanted to pay in cash." It sounded rehearsed, like she'd prepared for this moment. "Which client?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "You don't know them." Something in me sank. We'd always been open about everything, her clients, my projects, our finances. That wall she suddenly built between us felt cold, foreign. "I just thought it was strange," I said carefully. "You usually tell me about things like that." Her tone sharpened. "Do I have to report every little thing I do now?" That hit harder than I expected. "No," I said quietly, "but you don't usually keep secrets." She stared at me for a long moment, then got up. "You're overthinking, Daniel. It's just money." But the thing about just money is it's never just money, especially when it comes wrapped in secrecy. That night, she turned her back to me in bed. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, wondering when trust had turned into suspicion. Days turned into weeks. The envelope stayed, and I pretended not to care. She pretended not to notice. But we were both pretending to hold something fragile together, and the silence between us started to feel like glass about to crack. Then one Friday evening, she came home later than usual, much later. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, but she brushed past me when I asked. Something broke in me that night. When she went to bed, I opened her purse again. The envelope was gone. Instead, there was a folded receipt from a motel 2 towns over, paid in cash. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m. The same afternoon, she told me she was shopping for a client. I stood there for a long time, just staring at that slip of paper, feeling the floor fall out from under me. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about what it meant. I didn't sleep that night. The house was silent, but inside my head, everything was loud, the creak of every floorboard, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft rhythm of Emma's breathing beside me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, holding that motel receipt in my hand, the paper already crumpled from how tightly I was gripping it. I didn't know what to feel, first anger, confusion, or heartbreak, but more than anything, I felt disbelief. Emma wasn't the kind of woman who lied, at least she never used to be. I waited until morning. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I went through the motions, made coffee, packed my laptop, acted like everything was normal, but inside something was shifting. I watched her move around the kitchen, humming softly, her hair still damp from the shower, the gold band on her finger glinting in the sunlight. And all I could think was, how much of what I thought I knew about you is still true? That day at work, I couldn't concentrate. Numbers blurred on my screen. Client calls drifted by without meaning. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be Emma, explaining something, anything, but she didn't call. By evening, I made a decision not to accuse, not yet. I needed to know the truth first. That weekend, when Emma said she had to visit a client site in a neighboring town, I offered to drive her casually, as if just wanting to spend time together. She declined instantly. "It's a quick thing," she said. "No need to waste your Saturday." Her tone was light, but her eyes flickered away for a second too long. When she left that morning, I followed her. I'm not proud of it. Even as I sat in my car a few blocks behind hers, a part of me hated what I was doing. But another part, the part that couldn't unsee that receipt, whispered that I didn't have a choice anymore. She drove out of town, just as she'd said, but not toward the industrial area where her client offices usually were. Instead, she turned onto the highway, heading toward the same town listed on the motel receipt. For the next 30 minutes, I drove in silence, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. She eventually turned into a side road lined with trees. At the end of it, a small, weathered building with a faded sign, the same motel. She parked. I stayed in my car, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it. Then she got out, checked her phone, and a moment later, a man appeared. He was tall, neatly dressed, maybe in his early 50s. They didn't hug, didn't touch, but there was something in the way they looked at each other, familiarity, warmth, and something else. They walked inside together. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door they'd just disappeared through. Every memory of our 17 years together flashed before me: our first apartment, our wedding dance, the way she used to fall asleep on my shoulder during movies. All of it felt suddenly tainted, like it belonged to someone else. After nearly an hour, she came out again, alone, her expression unreadable. She got in her car and drove off. I waited until she was gone, then drove home separately. When she arrived, I was already sitting at the kitchen table. She walked in, surprised to see me there. "Hey," she said carefully, "you're home early." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't noticed before: fear. "Where were you, Emma?" I asked quietly. She blinked. "I told you, with a client at a motel." Her lips parted slightly. The color drained from her face. For a second, neither of us spoke. The air between us turned heavy. Then she exhaled slowly, sat down across from me, and said the words I never expected to hear. "Daniel, please don't jump to conclusions." My throat felt dry. "Then tell me the truth." She hesitated, her eyes glistening. "It's not what you think." I almost laughed that line, the oldest cliche in the book. "Then what is it, Emma? Because right now, it looks bad. The envelope, the cash, the lies, the motel dash dash." "It's not an affair," she cut in, her voice trembling. "Then what?" She stared down at her hands for a long time before she spoke. "It's about my brother." Her brother Michael had been estranged from the family for years, a history of addiction, bad debts, trouble with the law. The last I'd heard, he was living somewhere out of state, trying to start over. "I've been helping him," she said quietly. "He's clean now, but he's been struggling. I didn't tell you because I knew what you'd say." I sat back, stunned. "So that cash?" I've been giving him money. Not all at once, just small amounts when I can. He doesn't want it to go through the bank. He's afraid of his creditors finding out. It sounded plausible, almost too plausible. You met him at a motel? Her voice softened. He's ashamed, Daniel. He didn't want me to come to his place. He's living in one of the rooms there. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But something still didn't sit right. The way she'd hidden it, the way she'd lied about it when I asked the first time, it all felt too carefully constructed. I was going to tell you, she whispered. I just didn't know how. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I said, I wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me the truth sooner. She nodded, tears welling up. I know, I'm sorry. That night she cried in my arms. I held her, but part of me still felt distant, like I was comforting a stranger. Over the next few days, things seemed to settle. She was softer with me, more attentive, like she was trying to repair something fragile. I wanted to believe we were healing. But the thing about doubt is once it's there, it doesn't leave easily. A week later, when Emma was out again, I called Michael. He didn't answer at first, but when he did, his tone was wary. Hey, it's Daniel, I said. I just wanted to check in. Emma mentioned you two had been in touch. There was a pause. Emma? He repeated slowly. I haven't talked to her in months. My heart dropped. You're not in town? He sounded confused. No, I'm in Arizona. Why? I didn't answer. My hand trembled as I ended the call. So she had lied again. I felt something inside me snap quietly, like the last thread of trust finally giving way. When she came home that evening, I was waiting. Emma, I said, I talked to Michael. She froze. The blood drained from her face again. He's in Arizona, I continued, my voice steady. He hasn't seen you. So tell me the truth this time. Who are you really meeting? She didn't answer. She just looked at me, eyes wide, lips trembling, and then turned away. I reached into her bag, pulled out another envelope. This one wasn't as thick, but it was there again. She whispered, Please, Daniel, don't do this. Then tell me, I shouted, my voice breaking for the first time. What's going on? Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she said nothing. And that silence, that refusal, said more than any lie could have. I didn't recognize my own voice when I finally said it. Who is he, Emma? She stood by the counter, one hand clutching the back of a chair like she needed it to stay upright. Her breathing was uneven, her face pale. I could see the tears gathering at the corners of her eyes, but she still wouldn't meet my gaze. Tell me, I said again, softer this time. She turned toward me then, and for a second I saw something in her expression that wasn't guilt, it was pain. Real, raw pain. It's not what you think, she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Then make me understand, I said. She wiped her tears and sat down across from me. It took her a moment before she spoke, and when she did, her voice carried that tremor of exhaustion, the kind that comes from hiding too long. The man you saw, she began slowly. His name is not Michael. He's David. I frowned. Who is David? She hesitated. He's my ex-husband. The words hit me like a cold slap. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. What did you just say? She nodded, her eyes wet. Before you and I met, before we ever crossed paths, I was married once. It was brief. I never told you because I wanted that part of my life to stay buried. I just stared at her, struggling to process the words. You never told me you were married before. I know, she said. It was a mistake, that marriage, and hiding it from you. But I didn't want my past to define us. Why now? I asked. Why meet him after all these years? She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. Because he's dying. That silenced me. He reached out to me months ago, she continued quietly. He has liver failure. No family, no one to help him. He asked me to see him, not for reconciliation, not for love, just for closure. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe her, but all the lies that had piled up between us made every word sound like another half-truth. So the cash? I asked finally. She looked down. For his treatments. He didn't want me to tell you. He said he couldn't take charity from a man who didn't even know he existed. Her hands trembled as she added, I didn't know how to explain it, Daniel. I didn't want you to think less of me. I didn't want you to think I was still tied to him somehow. I leaned back, staring at her, trying to piece together the timeline, the lies, the motel visits, the secrecy. It fit. But it also didn't. There was still something missing. You could have told me, I said quietly. You could have trusted me with the truth. She nodded. I know. But I was afraid. You've always seen the world in lines and numbers, black and white. I didn't think you'd understand why I felt I needed to help him. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that hiding it made it worse. But when I looked at her, I saw a woman torn between guilt and compassion, not deceit. Still, the damage was done. For the next few days, we barely spoke. The air in the house felt heavy, every sound too loud against the silence that filled the gaps between us. I tried to focus on work, but every time I closed my laptop, I saw that envelope again in my mind, a symbol of everything we'd lost without realizing it. A week later, I came home to find Emma sitting on the couch, holding her phone, staring at nothing. Her face was pale, her eyes red. "He's gone," she said softly. It took me a moment to realize what she meant. "David?" She nodded. "He passed away this morning." I didn't know what to feel. I'd never met the man, never even knew he existed until days ago, and yet his shadow had managed to wedge itself between us. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She nodded without looking up. "I went to the hospital. He didn't have anyone else. He thanked me before he died." Her voice broke on that last word. I moved closer, hesitant, unsure if I should comfort her, but I did. I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't pull away. She cried into my shoulder, and I realized how tired we both were, not just from the lies, but from the weight of what those lies had cost us. In the days that followed, we began talking again, really talking. She told me everything, how David had spiraled after their divorce, how she'd blamed herself for walking away, how helping him now felt like her final act of redemption. I listened, and even though part of me still ached, another part understood. Life isn't simple. People carry ghosts from their past, some louder than others. Emma asked if I could ever forgive her. I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a switch you flip. It's something that unfolds slowly, painfully, through time and truth. Weeks passed. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she reached for my hand and said, "I never wanted to lose you, Daniel. I just wanted to protect you from a part of my life I was ashamed of." I squeezed her hand gently. "You don't protect someone by hiding from them, Em. You protect them by trusting them." She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. "I know that now." It wasn't a perfect ending. We didn't suddenly erase what had happened, but there was honesty between us again, and that felt like a beginning. Months later, while sorting through Emma's things, she'd gone to visit her sister, I found another envelope. This one wasn't hidden. It was on her desk, with my name on it. Inside was a note. "Daniel, I never meant to hurt you. Everything I did came from fear, not of losing you, but of losing the version of me you believed in. Thank you for giving me a chance to be honest again." Below the note was a check made out to a local hospice foundation in David's name. I sat there for a long time holding that piece of paper, realizing that trust isn't about never being broken, it's about finding the courage to rebuild after it has been. When she came home that evening, I hugged her, not because everything was perfect, but because sometimes love isn't about perfection at all. It's about staying, and even when it's hard. And as I stood there with her in my arms, I thought back to that first moment, that quiet Thursday morning, that unmarked envelope, and how something so small had nearly undone everything we'd built. But it also forced us to confront what we'd been avoiding for years, the truth that love isn't about never keeping secrets. It's about finding your way back after the truth finally comes out. And maybe that's what forever really means, not the absence of pain, but the willingness to keep choosing each other through it.